Okay, so we are ready to record Haunted Castle review number 831, and what's that? Yeah, 831. You know, we're trying to do this daily Monday to Friday thing. What are you talking about? I didn't take any time off. Yeah, I got like 8. What do you mean we didn't? What do you mean that nothing went posted? It was. The fuck's wrong with you? You're supposed to keep up with this. Okay, you know what? I don't want to argue. I'll change it to what it was. What it's supposed to be, 820. There you go. Better. Okay, can we get on with this? Okay, fine. Okay, whatever. Let's just play the fucking intro. Let's be done with it. Haunted Castle is a 1987-88-ish arcade game that is perhaps best known for two things: her being the first arcade entry in the soon-to-be long-running Castlevania series, and for being cheap and difficult. But mostly cheap. Haunted Castle never really got a proper home port over the years. The closest thing was an emulated version on some obscure Japanese PlayStation 2 compilation ages ago, but it's only recently that Haunted Castle was made available for the masses to play outside of resorting to MAME or hunting down the rare arcade cabinets still standing around. Firstly, as part of Konami's Arcade Classics Anniversary Collection released in 2019, and then a year later as an individual release as part of Hamster's Arcade Archive series. In a bit of a unique twist, we'll be using both releases for this video for reasons I'll get into in a little bit. Haunted Castle tells an epic tale of a young happy couple having gotten married recently, only for the count to swoop in and nab the bride. So now the vampire hunter, who may or may not be named Simon, but we'll call him Simon anyways in all the press, must venture through 6 perilous levels to rescue his bride and down the count. A feat that is easier said than done, as you'll have to contend with endless armies of the dead, floaty jumping controls, cheapo difficulty, and small critters you can barely hit half the time. To anyone who has played an old school Castlevania game, this should be old hat. You start the game with a leather whip as your starting weapon, and killing enemies will drop off items such as additional sub-weapons like bombs and boomerangs, as well as hearts used for ammunition for these sub-weapons, and also new weapons such as a ball and chain and even a sword. You know, like that sword that Simon wears on the cover of the first Castlevania, but never uses. Levels are linear, go from start to finish fighting all sorts of critters, until you reach the end where you have to defeat a boss to clear the level and move on to the next one. Haunted Castle only gives you 1 life per credit. I repeat, 1 life per credit. And on top of that, there are no meat items or anything of the sort that will replenish your health in-game, and even when you beat a level, you'll probably only get some of it back at most. The closest thing to such a concept would be to add a credit that will add another 16 hit points for up to 64 maximum. You can only do this a couple times. So naturally, once you die, it's game over. You do have the option to continue a couple times before you're shit out of luck, and yeah, might as well touch on this. Haunted Castle is perhaps best known for its insane difficulty, which does vary depending on the version you're playing. The American Haunted Castle is notorious for its high damage counts, to the point where it only takes a couple errant hits to end you quickly. Meanwhile, the Japanese Akumajo Dracula game is a little easier in that the damage you take is considerably lower, and there's also the European version of Haunted Castle, which is the best of both worlds, the Japanese difficulty and the English translation, and only available on the Arcade Archives release and nowhere to be found in the Konami Arcade Classics Anniversary Collection. This, of course, means ultimately nothing, because Haunted Castle is one of those arcade games that tosses a bunch of shit at you until you die, prompting you to pop in more quarters to continue. Except Haunted Castle gives you limited continues. On a coin-operated video arcade machine whose whole purpose for being is to make money, this usually entails making a game as pants-shittingly difficult as possible, and if players want to continue their game, they'll have to pop in another quarter. Limiting continues seems a bit counterintuitive for that kind of environment, but fortunately it's not a problem today, as the Arcade Archives release, as well as the Anniversary Edition, gives the player unlimited continues, and the latter also has a convenient save state function. But let's set that aside for a bit, because for all the complaints about damage tables and limited continues, Haunted Castle simply isn't that good of a game. Like I said, it's all about tossing random shit your way to deal with. It's less about going from point A to point B the most direct route possible. It's a linear game. It's dealing with little things that pop up as you're going from point A to point B, whether it be flying wall debris, bone dragon mini-bosses, warping to alternate dimensions, crossing crumbling bridges, or like. The game likes to throw in new, unique scenarios for you to contend with, and sometimes it's a matter of survival, while others it's a matter of what the fuck. I mean, seriously, what the fuck? It also doesn't help that control is pretty putrid, to the point that the controls for the original Castlevania on NES seem fluid by comparison. Haunted Castle Belmont guy moves like a sloth, his jumps are floaty and stiff, and while response time is respectable, attacking is awkward and sometimes ineffective, as enemies take a billion hits to die, whether it be mummies, knights, or even the lowliest fleamen. You combine all these things together and you've got, without question, one of the most frustrating experiences I've come across in this Castlevania franchise. Even Castlevania the Adventure on Game Boy is a more balanced game than this. Make of that what you will. That being said, Haunted Castle does have the best iteration of the stopwatch, a trademark Castlevania sub-weapon, as it freezes everything, including bosses, all of them, including Dracula himself, and costs only a couple hearts per use. Mind you, hearts are a bit of a premium in this game, and it can be very easy to swap one sub-weapon for another, losing the other one forever, but if you can hold on to this baby for the rest of the game, it'll be relatively smooth sailing from that point on. Haunted Castle sports some impressive visuals for a Castlevania title with its big characters and detailed level design. Simon himself looks ridiculously buff and his walking posture is no Belmont strut. Also, this guy has a problem with hitting little critters. Did I mention that? Okay, never mind. Monsters vary in sizes from the smallest bats to the biggest creatures, some of the more imposing demons you'll encounter before 16-bit technology became a thing. There are some nice little moments, the fog slowly giving way to reveal the castle in the background, the occasional transition from day to night to red to black. These little moments might not make Haunted Castle fun to play, but they're cool little moments to witness and see play out nonetheless. Haunted Castle also has some nice sound quality for the most part, and the soundtrack is certainly a highlight. There are some classic tunes that would be featured in other games, Bloody Tears Cross Your Heart, that sort of thing. Some songs have a bit of a twang to it that makes them somewhat unbearable, but I would attribute that to poor instrumentation than the actual melodies themselves, which aren't too bad if you hear them in a remixed format. Sound effects comprise somewhat rough-sounding digitized samples, some voiceovers here and there, some nice additions for the most part. So as of this recording, you have two convenient options of playing Haunted Castle. The Arcade Archives release from Hamster in 2020 gives you 3 ROMs to play with, the easier Japanese version, the tough American version, and the in-between European version, which is middle of the road. And there's an option for unlimited continues that you could disable if you want to play it old school, God knows why. On the flip side, the Arcade Anniversary Collection has save states, and it does come with 11 other games that you'd probably be better off playing than Haunted Castle, which overall is not a very good game. It looks pretty, sounds pretty, and it's certainly creative in terms of cooking up unique scenarios for you to deal with. If you can endure the entirety of Haunted Castle, you could appreciate the subtle story being told here through its little moments. Unfortunately, cheap arcade difficulty, generally poor play control, wonky collision detection, and other minor quibbles drive a stake through the old replay value of Haunted Castle, and despite the re-releases mitigating the limited continues feature, the game itself just isn't very good. It's worth a shot for the sake of curiosity if nothing else, and also if you enjoy really punishing arcade games, in which case, have at you. But otherwise, there are plenty of other Vania games more worthy of your time. Pass on this.